Y'all look good. Y'all look good. Would you, children of the light, pray with me? For the earth's cycles and seasons, for the rising of spring and the growing summer, for autumn's fullness and the hidden depths of winter, thanks be to you, O Christ. For the life seed and the life force and seeds buried in the ground that shoot green and bear fruit and fall to the earth, thanks be to you. Let us learn from the earth's cycles of birthing, the times and seasons of dying. Let us learn of you in the soil of our own souls, O Christ, and your journey through death to birth. Let us learn of you in our souls this day and the journey of letting go. Amen. Early in the morning, while it was still dark, we rose before the sun. For as a child growing up here in Massachusetts, each third Monday of April's Patriots' Day was about three things: tricorn hats, pancakes, and running shoes. And while it was still dark, we would make our annual pilgrimage to Lexington's Green to see the reenactment of Day's revolutionary shot heard round the world beginnings. After watching the Redcoats march past the scattered and dying minute rebels, we would walk back up to my grandfather, cousins Hazel and Bob's house and be heartily fed with the joy of pancakes, real maple syrup. And we'd trek back to that same Lexington Green with our running shoes on to run the annual 5-mile road race. It wasn't 26.2, all you marathoners, but it was 5 miles. And then it was a challenge. We would go back to Hazel and Bob's house and watch BZ-TV coverage of the Boston Marathon. Now, there's a special feeling that rises when there is a shared embodied experience. Watching a marathon, having just run a few miles, feels different. Watching a reenactment of something that historically unfolded at the very same crack of dawn time carries a different kind of weight. Call that solidarity. On the third Monday in April, shared experience. Sacred embodiment that emerges from the depths. Now, Reverend Kate taught you how to say risen indeed, but I'm going to teach you how to say semi-sesquicentennial. Can you say that? Semi-sesquicentennial. That's the last time and first time I've ever said it. Okay, 250 years ago is what that means. Yesterday, you all know this, marked the beginning of what we call the American Revolution against a king of England. Tyranny trying to be toppled. Governor Healy was present yesterday at the reenactment there on the Lexington Green, the same one I went to as a kid, and spoke about the depths many of us are currently experiencing in this country. We live in a moment, she said, where our freedoms are once again under attack from the highest office in the land. We see things that would be familiar to our revolutionary predecessors: the silencing of critics, the disappearing of people from our streets, demands for unquestioning fealty. Fascism, authoritarianism, loves to play the bully, to mock others. We see that in the story of Easter. Jesus, before the tomb, was mocked. He was bullied. He was humiliated. The powers thought that they had the power. This is what is happening, as Maura Healey says, our governor, right here, in our democratic experiment, which is not a foregone conclusion. Shame on those in power who would try to hurt and dehumanize others. So much so in the name of Christian white nationalism. This fascism is very much on the rise. It is a clear and present danger. I don't think the Christian white nationalists in power right now have been listening to our texts that were so well read today by Joshua and Nancy from Amos, Isaiah, Matthew. The stranger, love, neighbor. We know it's bad when the Boston Celtics are chiming in. Jaylen Brown put it succinctly and accurately this past week. We're in a pretty bad place right now. He was speaking at MIT to a group of K to 12 students about climate justice. And he said that it is our task to not only reduce our eco footprint, but to embrace our soul print. We need to prioritize climate justice in all aspects of our lives. He went on to speak about, as he was growing up, his grandmother continually invited him into a garden and taught him how to plant seeds and to nourish soil. Soil and soul. From an unexpected source, the Boston Garden, we hear of this invitation to see nature and faith, earth and spirit as one, and to look to the earth for part of our healing. The empty tomb was hewn by rocks. It was in a garden, a key piece of information for our interpretation of the Easter story. Our spirituality, dear friends, I believe, needs to be more and more grounded these days in the dirt, to be rooted, to find, and to ask ourselves in those spaces of grounding, what is our soul print? What is our story? What is our deepest desire, and how might it yet unfurl, even when the world seems to be spinning out of control? Jesus died on a cross, which was once a tree that had been co-opted by empire to bring about cruelty. The work for us is the work of spiritual refocus. Earthrise. Apollo 8, Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders took out of the space capsule window a photo as that capsule was orbiting the moon. He grabbed a Hasselblad 500 EL camera, put some Ektachrome Kodak. Ektachrome, thank you, you're an actual photographer, you know that word. It was the back in the day when it wasn't a digital camera, it was something you would pull out of a canister and you'd put it into the camera and you'd carefully load it and you'd click the film. You wouldn't know what you have taken until you got back to Earth, but he took a photo, the first ever color photograph of the Earth. The Earthrise then quickly became the most iconic of color photos ever taken. It's in your bulletin on the next page, page 8, but I'm guessing you already know what it looks like. You've seen its rising. The contrast in that photo is what startles and inspires. The beautiful blue, white, brown sphere of Earth rising above a desolate and monochromed grayed out lunar surface. Instead of moonrise or sunrise, we have Earthrise. A year and a half later, after this image was taken, it found itself on many flags flying and magazine covers, which helped inspire the first Global Earth Day, where 10% of the population of this country took to the streets to say, we want cleaner air, water, we want a better and more healed earth. Our own Christian tradition picked it up. The Episcopal Common Book of Prayer, a few years later in Eucharistic Prayer C, goes this way: at your command all things came to be, the vast expanse of interstellar space, galaxies, suns, the planets in their courses, and this fragile earth, our island home. By your will they were created and have their being. At sunrise, friends, we give thanks for the light, for direction, for illumination. At Earthrise, we give thanks for unity, for climate, for cloud and water swirl. Together on this shared fragile island home. At Earthrise, we give thanks for the radical diversity on this planet, for our radical need for equity and inclusion for all who share this one single home. Earthrise becomes a choice to pull back and seek a broader perspective, to have something within us that sees more deeply. Often people refer to Earthrise as God's eye view on the earth. But I'd like to push us a little bit with the notion of God's eye is on the sparrow kept in our hearts. Notwithstanding, I'd like to suggest that there's a different implication here, that God is somewhere here, not far away. I don't think God is watching from the cosmos down on the earth. I believe God is here in the dirt, in the soil, at the cross, in the tomb, with the people and the tears and the joy. So I believe that Mary actually gets it right in today's gospel story. She sees Jesus as the gardener. She's not mistaken. God among us here on earth, here in the earth, not some far off place in the clouds. Thank you, Dulce Nombre de Jesus and St. Newell teaching us, no está en las nubes. God is here. God the sower, Christ the water, Spirit, power. So Earthrise should be our view. A perspective where no man-made boundaries are seen, just a swirl of diversity, equity, inclusion, a swirl of blue, brown, white, water, land, sky, or water, warmth, wind. As Reverend Kate referenced, some of us over the course of our Lenten experience were invited to plant some seeds. One of our worship services back in March handed out some seeds from the Native Alliance of Seed Keepers, and we were invited to place them in some soil and nurture them. It's not a given once you put a seed in the ground that it will grow. You need to do some things: water, warmth, and wind. You need to water that soil so that the seed begins to break apart. That hard shell needs to be coaxed to let go and to begin its radical extension and the beginning of roots. The warmth that comes from the sunshine warms the soil that holds the seed while in the depths and helps it achieve the right temperature for emergence. And wind is a way to say that oxygen is essential for a seed to germinate. Embryos undergo metabolic reactivation, which require a constant supply of oxygen through the tiny opening in the seed coat called the micropyle. I didn't know any of that. I had to look that whole line up. Pretty obvious. Earthrise is a spiritual invitation to look to God's sacred book of nature for our grounding, to take the stories of Jesus and the prophets outside and to conjure from them courage. So if water is necessary, and if we are indeed seeds, water can be seen as open-heartedness. We all have that hard shell. We all tend to avoid being authentic at times and avoid hard feelings at times, avoid opening our hearts to vulnerability and pain and hurt. But our Easter story and the characters therein, like Mary who wept freely, show us the way of the water that is open-heartedness. We must also remember that we are invited not to see the evil in our world as coming and making particular people evil. No one is evil. There are evil policies, there are evil practices, but our faith reminds us again and again that all are beloved. All are to be called back into the fold of God, each and every one of us. We must take that hate and turn it into heat and not move ourselves into that spirit of dehumanization, even when we feel dehumanized. That is the invitation of water, open-heartedness. Warmth is, of course, the soil of community. Soil is magically diverse with minerals, microbes, and fellow seeds. It's a community that's warmed by the sun, divine rays in community. I want to take a moment to say, if you are not an active member of a faith community, of a community that points to things beyond self-interest, beyond your own place in the world, but sees yourself as beloved and are having a role in the world, now is a high time to get yourself involved. There are progressive institutions that are increasingly under attack. There are nonprofits. There are church and faith communities that need more love and more seeds to gather, because tyranny feels and is fueled by divide and conquer. If we thwart that by coming together, we might find that warmth of community. That is the warmth of the soil of community, and wind is the spirit that never leaves us in the same place. Just as the empty tomb causes Mary, then Peter and John and others to run, so too the Spirit never leaves us in one place, but always pushes us into the movement. Christianity was first known as the way, people on the way. They were on the move always. The story of Easter never remains at the empty tomb. It goes out into the world. Wind is quite a force. If you came to church this morning, you noticed that some porta potties and fences were blown down last night because of this wind that is at work. It has a serious force. It is a mystery. We don't know where it comes from. We don't really know where it's going, but we know that the Spirit calls us into a movement. On Good Friday, down the streets of central Boston, people gathered with the Stations of the Cross, to sing in solidarity. Solidarity, take a walk with me. Jesus, take a walk with me. O Spirit, guide my feet. Filling the streets of Boston with signs that said, all are sacred, dignity, not deportation. There have been many such gatherings, the hands-off movement, moral opposition rising from Reverend Barber and others. These times demand more embodied gatherings, moving with the spirit wind that never leaves us in the same place. So if Mary got it right that Jesus is the gardener, and Church of the Covenant got it right that we are indeed seeds, sacred embodiment that emerges from the depths, we all need more warmth, water, and wind. And so I am grateful for the mystery that comes out of the ground. I am grateful for that which might not yet be known, what might be coming to fruition. Adrienne Marie Brown reminded us at the beginning of our Lenten season that things aren't getting worse, they're getting uncovered. What is getting uncovered right now? What new life may be emerging from empty tombs is the question for our spiritual earthrise gaze. But sometimes seeds don't emerge. Did anyone plant a seed and it not emerge from your from your pellet? Yes, I think I had 3 out of 6 not emerge. There's some pain there, right? There's some feeling of I didn't do it right. But it's the mystery. Sometimes things don't emerge, sometimes things die. I wasn't with you all last year on Easter. 24 hours before Easter service started, I called Joshua and said, hey, can you preach the sermon? Because my dear friend was dying, and then I needed to be with him. And thanks be to God, I was able to be with him in a whole different kind of a Holy Weekend, from Good Friday to Easter morning when he died. 20 days from diagnosis to death. I don't know why Tim died young. I felt like he had a lot more to give. I don't know why babies are dying in Gaza right now. I don't know why children are dying in Ukraine. I don't know why people are forced into these horrific and silly wars driven by greedy tyrants. I don't have answers as to why some seeds don't make it out of ICUs. Our beloved Donald Denniston, I don't know why. We miss him. We miss those who leave us too soon. What I do know is that every seed matters. What I do know is that every seed is created and crafted in the very image of God, and that matters. What I do know is that every seed is still speaking. Presente. Those who have been with us are never gone from us in the community of faith, in the cloud of witnesses from which we still look and spin and find inspiration. I'm really grateful that Easter always lands in April, because there's a lot of ecclesiastical touch points in this month that I think we can find inspiration from. Ecclesiastical feast days. On the 4th, Dr. King. On the 9th, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. These two who spoke so powerfully, truth to power, are still speaking to us today. Dr. King, who on the night before he was gunned down by white supremacy, said, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. Like anyone, I'd like to have a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And God has allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've seen the promised land, and I may not get there with you, but I want you all to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And Bonhoeffer, also assassinated when he was 39 years young, imprisoned by the Nazi regime for his role in an attempted assassination on Hitler to stop the suffering for the masses and the millions, penned a letter to a friend while still incarcerated 1 year before he was killed. He wrote, being able to face dying doesn't yet mean we can face death. It's possible for a human being to manage dying, but overcoming death means resurrection. It is not through the art of dying, but through Christ's resurrection that a new and cleansing wind can blow through our present world. This is the answer to the give me a place to stand and I will move the earth. If a few people really believe this and were guided by it in their earthly actions, a great deal would change. To live in the light of resurrection, that is what Easter means. Thank you, Dr. King. Thank you, Bonhoeffer. Like Jesus, these two are still speaking against a state that sponsors hate, and we stand to receive their wisdom. We hear in their lives Jesus' refrain, very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a single grain, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. Earthrise. Friends, I believe that we can look to the earth for part of our help right now. We, if we join in with that, may just find and join that we have the power to help move the earth. If a few people really believe this and were guided by it, that we are invited to live in the light of the resurrection, things, a great deal of things, would indeed change. I pray that as we move into this Easter season that is not just one day but 50, that we would remember that we are made in the image of God and that there is power still at work in God and in each of our lives to bring that change. Catherine, I want to thank you for giving to both Reverend Joshua and I a plant this past year named the Rose of Jericho. Does anyone know about this plant? It's also named as the Resurrection Plant. And this plant, she handed it to me, and it was just a dried up ball of like nothingness. And I said, "Thank you." And she said, "No, there's some directions in there, Rob. You got to add some water, and then the warmth and the wind will come through that water." And I didn't really believe you, Catherine, but indeed, and Joshua can attest to this, indeed, if you add a little water to this ball of dried up, desiccated thing, which for years can remain without water, it blossoms. Now, this comes from the Chihulian Desert in Mexico and other places in the southeast of this Turtle Island. It is a promise that in the desert blossoms will come. It is named the Resurrection Plant for a reason. Friends, I believe that we are called to bring that kind of an image to our work, to our family lives, to our life as a citizen, wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves. And we remember that refrain that is on your bulletin today for Easter. We can live into that very affirmation that the Greek poet and queer activist Dinos Christianopoulos, I can't pronounce my Greek names, but we'll call him Dinos, first penned on the quote, "They tried to bury us, and they didn't know we were seeds." I imagine you've heard this quote before. A movement has used it over the years to lift up liberation and love. Because even as the forces are spewing hatred and dehumanization, de-tree naturing our world and our climate, even though those things are happening, the promise here is that those things are not the possessors of true power. True power lies in the people filled with love and liberation and care for one's neighbor, a radical thing again and again, a simple and straightforward thing. So it's all about perspective. May we look to the earth rising and see ourselves in that and hear the refrain, "Now the green blade rises from the buried grain, wheat that in the dark earth for many days has lain. Love lives again, that with the death has been, love is come again, like wheat that rises green." Friends, Christ is rising. Earth is rising. Christ is risen. Earth is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Alleluia.